Such heroic nonsense. The phrase that shook a generation to its core, uttered by one of the most iconic, nuanced, and complex villains ever imagined, Megatron. And this week, we're taking you deep into the character and lore with part 1 of our Studio Series 86 Megatron Spotlight. If you want more than just a review, including ideas, tips, and tricks to increase your display options, this is the episode for you. All this and more, only at Heroic Nonsense. Let's go. I would have waited an eternity for this, but the wait is over. A bit of a play on words of one of Megatron's most memorable quotes from the 86 movie, but quite appropriate in this case because we finally have Studio Series 86 Megatron in our hands, arguably the best official version of Megatron in the scale that has ever been released. I can't tell you how long we've been waiting for this figure, especially once Optimus joined the Studio Series 86 lineup, and I have to say, it was totally worth it. This figure is incredible and truly is a mini masterpiece in all senses of the word. For such a larger-than-life character, I had to break the spotlight up into 2 parts, with the first one focusing exclusively on the bot mode itself. We're not only going to review this figure in detail this week, but I'll also show you his range of play and display with additional accessories you can find from other figures, plus compare him not only to other figures in the line, but different iterations of Megatron, including Masterpiece. And with that, we begin. Megatron, what can I say? There was always something about him that made you love the character even though you knew he was evil. Yes, Optimus Prime was a heroic leader of the Autobots and the shining light of the Transformers universe, but I don't think he'd have been as archetypal as he was without a truly dark mirrored reflection that was Megatron. I could go on here about Megatron, his internal struggle, and his nuanced spark, but this is a review of Studio Series 86 Megatron, so I won't go too deep. However, my take on Megatron is that you can't really fully appreciate the leader of the Decepticons, whether as a toy or otherwise, without having a bit of understanding of what made Megatron who he was. Looking at the figure, I'd say all that anger, darkness, and complexity of the character is captured nicely in this iteration of Megatron, with the added bonus of it being as close to the movie version you can get in modern times by a major toy company. Putting aside the controversy of what his alt mode should or could have been, we now have a properly scaled, highly detailed, and cartoon-accurate version of Megatron that you can proudly display as a centerpiece of your collection, and let me show you why. This is Megatron. From head to toe, we've finally been blessed with a version of Megatron as we imagine him that's in scale with the rest of the recent toy lines and looks magnificent. He has his iconic scowl, his perfectly designed fusion cannon, the movie-like details and design, and that overall imposing impression that only a perfectly designed Megatron could convey in toy form. There's also something to be said about all those lines and such, especially around his legs that evoke a feeling that he stepped right out of the movie, and I love the various shades of gray that they used across the figure. While I would have liked some multiple versions of his face, I'm happy we got this one, and if you compare the sculpt to the 86 movie, you'll see how close they got to replicating it note for note. From what I can tell, he's set in the right proportions. I'm actually truly amazed at how streamlined he is for the most part with no real kibble anywhere. And based off of the movie designs as well as the original toys, his legs are on point, including the bit of that wing design and grooves from the grip. What's really impressive is how clean the back is, especially at the top, which is nice to see considering he transforms into a bulky tank. And I particularly like the way they incorporated the tank treads to give it a bit of that grip feeling from the back as well. Very clean all around, probably the cleanest to date for such a complex figure. As for his 2 accessories, his energy sword and gun mode, of himself, they can be placed on his back, though I highly doubt many will display him this way. As he can transform and hold himself at the same time, this small accessory works perfectly for the likes of Starscream. We now finally have a scaled down version of this to use with the rest of the line, which was a long time coming. Check out that small Decepticon symbol on the side. The great thing is, you can pretend that he transforms into his gun alt mode and just leave it at that, since as we all know, a properly scaled Megatron Walther P38 would not fit into a toy hand. Plus, we already have Masterpiece for that. The second accessory that he comes with is his energy sword from the movie, which I had to go back and check up on because I was convinced it was the energy mace that he used back then. They could have gone different ways with the design, including a clear plastic, but I kinda like the more cartoony vibe to it. However, if you are interested in getting a clearer version, well then, I have a fix for you. The Blocky's full-size Megatron figure comes with a sword that is in fact clear. Not only that, but it actually fits into his hand perfectly and scales well, with the hilt coming off in case you want to recreate the scene from the movie before the blade is extended. It really is a matter of preference in the end, especially for a weapon that had such a small appearance in the movie. Still, it does look really cool. But that's not the only reason you might want to pick up a Megatron blockies. He also comes with some other hidden gems, including the mace and laser he uses to shoot at Optimus. And guess what? The mace actually fits into the same sockets that Megatron's hands do. All you have to do is open up the lower arm, snap out the hand, and snap in the mace. I honestly couldn't believe that the ball joint is almost a perfect fit, only being slightly smaller, which makes it just a bit looser than the hands, but not by much. After that, you now have a version of Studio Series 86 Megatron that can wield the ball and chain just like he did in the cartoon and create so many fun poses. I'll show you in the display and build section later some cool ideas using this and Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime. As for the laser from the movie, it does feel slightly bigger than it would be if designed for SS86 Megatron, but not by much. It also doesn't fit in perfectly because of some tabs, but it definitely gets the job done if you want to recreate that famous scene. Another fun thing you can do if you have your Laserbeak lying around is place him with your Megatron on his arm, which is actually how I usually like to display my Megatrons. If you're wondering how other Laserbeaks that look a bit better than this one work with Studio Series Megatron, don't worry, I got you covered later in the video. As for posability, really easy to get him into a walking pose and he really does look great. Extremely menacing and realistic, which is my favorite go-to for displays as well as for action shots for these videos. Running on the other hand took a bit of work, but eventually got him to balance on one foot, though it was tenuous at best. It is possible here, no movie magic for this shot. One of my favorite poses though has to be this one. Out of all the Transformers, I actually think Megatron looks to be one of the best, if not the best, in this pose. And he balances perfectly, especially since you can push up his foot to get that realistic look as well as help in the balance. Another cool feature, even if minor and a first I've seen, is the ability for the flaps on the waist to disappear into the leg automatically rather than just flip upwards like on SS86 Optimus for example. Really cool bit of engineering here and adds to the already perfect look of Megatron displayed this way. Finally, there is a slot in his fusion cannon to tab in some of the weapon's fire accessories, though the only ones I really made work here were the thin ones, as the flared out versions, at least the ones I tried, couldn't get in deep enough. In the end, I prefer this more precise blast effect for Megatron's cannon. Overall, this is a Megatron you definitely want in your collection, even if you have issues with the tank being the alt mode, because let's face it, most would keep him in this form anyway. If you want that Megatron you always wish you had as a kid, or love the 80s character, this is a definite must-have. So this is the one we've all been waiting for, Studio Series 86 Optimus versus Studio Series 86 Megatron, and as far as bot forms go, you can't get a better pairing. Having these two legendary leaders next to each other, representing not only the figures from the 86 movie, but also exactly how we imagine them as kids in toy form, is amazing. I am a bit surprised at the slight height difference with Megatron being a bit taller, though I feel that it's probably fine within the lore. Otherwise, the style, design, colors, they all match up so that you really get a feel that these two characters are meant to be from the same time and era. And how does Megatron compare to his future version from the same movie? Quite well actually, especially when comparing their two head sculpts which look so cool next to each other. Though again, I feel Megatron is a bit taller and would now have liked Galvatron to be as tall. Not a deal breaker, especially since they don't appear together at the same time, other than at the creation point, but would have been cool to see Galvatron hitting the same proportions. I do think, however, that Megatron and Cyclonus will look amazing displayed next to each other. You'd have to create your own lore for this one, unless you're taking cues from the IDW comics run. And here we have most of the Studio Series 86 lineup pre-Megatron's transformation into Galvatron, minus the rest of the Dinobots since they are just too big to include in this shot. And no, I didn't forget about the Constructicons, though I'd say they're kind of a mix between Studio Series and other lines since they're mostly based off of Combiner Wars Devastator. Still, they do look great here amongst the rest of the 86 lineup, again showcasing the characters when Megatron was still around. As for the Seekers, I would have gone into way more detail in shots here, but as we know, we're going to be getting Studio Series versions, changing up the now quite old molds. So I'd prefer to keep the in-depth look at this team up for that point. Still, pretty nice image of the main Seekers. I wonder how much taller the new versions will be. I do think Blitzwing is still a good matchup for these types of displays as he came later in the past lines, and I feel carries more of the same design cues and figures that came before him. And as we get ready to retire the original two classic characters and their pre-Studio Series versions from our main display, I wanted to share one last look at them together. And how they evolved over time, still holding up quite well for what they represented at the time. It's still sad to be at this point, lots of good memories giving these two to our boys and watching them play with them. While still a great figure in its own right, with some really nice sculpt elements, there's really no comparison if you want a true-to-form Megatron in bot mode, with the Studio Series 86 version being cleaner, bigger, and just overall a better rep of the character from the 80s. And surprise, some other versions of Megatron that I think are worth looking at, including Megatron from the Blockies lineup, which I have to say I love. We're having so much fun collecting and building these guys, plus getting all those extra accessory goodies I've been showing here from this specific Megatron. But no review can be complete without taking a look at, in my opinion, the gold standard of Megatrons, MP36 Masterpiece Megatron. But this new Megatron is definitely giving him a run for his money. I still probably prefer the Masterpiece version given his alt mode as well as his slightly cleaner design, but man does Studio Series Megatron look good. I even sometimes lean towards preferring Studio Series Megatron for his overall look and playability aspect. Some of the major differences are around the legs since they need to accomplish different things for their respective alt modes, though I kinda like the Studio Series bulkier look, shading, and lines. From the side, you can see a lot of those similar design cues being used, specifically with the lines on the grip, the winged portion, and feet styling. While Masterpiece Megs definitely succeeds on the legs portion from this angle, SS86 Megs isn't too far behind given the type of figure and the lineup he's part of. One area that definitely wins over Masterpiece Megatron is the very clean look of SS86 Megatron's upper back, really perfected from this angle. But that's not it. I can't leave out one of my favorite versions of Megatron who is quite dated at this point but still quite special to me, since this is technically the guy that got me back into collecting Transformers and starting the Transformers journey with my boys. Plus, he had some features that haven't been replicated yet, like real working treads that I loved. And how about Core Class Megatron? A nice matchup for those times you need to shrink Megatron down to use with your bigger Titan class playsets, like Scorponok and Trypticon. For a Core Class in tank mode, this Megatron works perfectly and looks quite good. Nice to see that Age of the Prime's Megatronus, the inspiration for Megatron's universe view and name, is at the same height and looks quite cool next to Studio Series Megs. I definitely wouldn't want these two to look off next to each other at a time when they're both coming out together, so I really appreciate that the two lines cross over well for these two. As promised from my review of Prima Prime, something I noticed at the time. Do you think their helmets and waist share some design elements? I sure do, specifically around the helmet, which looks like a more ancient form of Megatron sculpt. There's some cool lore there that you can create and expand on for sure. So there are obviously a ton of ways you can include Megatron in your bigger displays, but this time I plan on mostly focusing on Megatron and all the ways he himself can be posed and displayed. And I decided to start with my favorite one, which is Megatron on his throne, with my version having come from Studio Series 86 Starscream. And look at how perfectly Megatron fits on it, with his legs, waist, and even arms realistically melding into the throne, way better than Starscream ever did. So if you do happen to have this throne, I suggest getting it out and trying it for yourself. You won't be disappointed. It's as if this throne was made for this version of Megatron, and you would be hard-pressed to find a better combination. But don't worry if you don't have this throne in your collection and can't find it out in the wild, because Blockies Megatron, which is still in market, has one with a very similar appearance and scale. And it works just as well, even if the seat portion is a smidge higher in the Blockies version. However, as you can see, you can get the exact same look and feel using either version. I didn't change the position at all, switching from one to the other. Blockies Megatron also comes with this nice Cybertronian looking stand, which forms a nice black base for your Studio Series Megatron if you'd like to display him more prominently in your collection. Let's see that Mace again in action, also from Blockies Megatron, which I showed you earlier fits right into the slot where SS86 Megatron's hands fits in once removed. And you can have a lot of fun setting up Studio Series Megatron versus Optimus battling each other just like in the cartoon with their energy weapons. What's great is that it's really fun for the kids to play with as well, and create their own adventures and battles since a ball and chain mace on hinges can be quite exciting to use. As for the energy sword that SS86 Megatron comes with, it's very easy to recreate that iconic scene from the movie where Megatron comes back after losing his fusion cannon and having already damaged Prime, by simply using a blast effect and placing Optimus's hand over it to keep it in place, just like he does in the movie. The same type of recreation from the movie can be set up where Megatron pulls his found laser on Optimus right before Optimus uses his last bit of strength to take down Megatron. The Blockies laser can also be used to set up this display based off the 86 movie where Megatron grabs Hot Rod as he tries to save Optimus. Shifting gears a bit, this could be a fun display idea borrowing some concepts from Transformers 1 and making up your own main series lore where Megatron discovers the destroyed primes and finds Megatronus' cannon. The next few shots are of Megatron in some very famous poses, taken from a wide range of sources, and not just from the cartoon. Let me know in the comments section if you can name them all and which one you would consider using in your display. Also let me know if any one of these is your favorite. Well, I can tell you mine, and it's that of Megatron holding Reflector from the very cool comic book cover. I again got this camera from, you guessed it, Blocky's Megatron. I highly suggest getting him, not just because it's a great figure and build, but also because of all the amazing accessories it comes with. And back to the movie. There are a ton of great display ideas from the part of the movie where Megatron and the Decepticons board the Autobot ship at the beginning. Another really great scene I always remembered from the movie was at the beginning where Laserbeak lands on Megatron's arm after spying on the Autobots, and then Megatron sends him off to replay the conversation in Soundwave. If the recent Laserbeak doesn't float your boat, which I would tend to agree with, there are some other options you can choose from, in this case showcasing Masterpiece Laserbeak and the Laserbeak that comes with Blocky's Megatron. You can see that although the Masterpiece and Blocky's ones are a bit bigger, they're not too far off, and I actually think the recent Laserbeak is too small, and the designs here are way better. Now let's see how all three look on Megatron's arm, starting with the recent version of Laserbeak, my absolute least favorite, followed by the Blocky's version that comes with Megatron, and rounding it out with Masterpiece. My favorite Laserbeak is Blocky's right now. I like the cartoony vibe and the way it kinda lives in my head when I think of Laserbeak from my youth. This version does have less detail though, so it really is up to preference. But for me, it just fits with the Studio Series 86 figure. If you have a preference or another idea, let me know. Of course, you can always grab the original 80s Laserbeak or replica and use that. I'm excited to see whether a completely new Studio Series Soundwave will be created with more accurate looking and scaled versions of the cassettes. Let's end this part off with a bunch of the team display ideas I had using more recent versions of the toys which I think would look great together, some of which we saw already earlier in this episode. One of my favorites is with the Constructicons, which brings back memories of images like these from the comics and even the cartoon. I'll definitely update this one once the last two Constructicons are in our hands. These days, I'm totally into the Insecticons, not sure why since I didn't really care much for them as a kid. But I think the recent releases look great and pair really well with the Constructicons, giving this display idea a very nostalgic 80s vibe. And one last build, Megatron and Tarn, the most devout follower of Megatron's ideals as seen mostly in the IDW run of Transformers. I think I'd have preferred Tarn to be a bit bigger, but still looks great together along with Megatron's Decepticon Chief of Police, Barricade. That brings us to the end of this episode, part 1 of our in-depth review of the awesome Studio Series 86 Megatron. Part 2 will delve into his tank alt form, with comparisons to other tanks and Studio Series figures, the step-by-step transformation from bot to tank, some guess that scene fun, and a lot more. Be sure to like, subscribe, and get notifications so you don't miss the second part of this action-packed Megatron Spotlight. Until then, remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Dragon!